Good morning, Mr. Ahmed here. This is going to be our notes for completing the square. This is another method that we will use to solve quadratics, and it will correlate with the big ideas 9.4 assignment. This one's tough, so it's going to take some practice. You're going to have to take some time and really work through these very slowly. This is going to be our goal for the entire week, so buckle it down, work hard, and we will get through it. So, the completing the square. For us to use this method to solve a quadratic, we are going to take the standard form ax squared plus bx plus c, and we're going to rearrange it so that we create a perfect square trinomial. The way that we will rearrange it is we'll keep the x squared and the x on the left side, and then on the right side we will move the constant, or just the number like the 6, the 5, whatever it is, we're going to move that over to the right side. We will then complete the square in these two boxes. Okay, so we make two boxes and we're going to put some values in there. All right, so step 1, rearrange the equation. Our original example says x squared minus 12x plus 5. For it to be in the form x squared plus bx, we have to move this 5 to the other side. So for us to move the 5 to the other side, we will subtract 5 from both sides. And I am going to be left with x squared minus 12x plus a box. That's where I'm going to find a value. And that is equal to negative 5 plus another box. The reason why we have a box on both sides is whatever we add to one side of the equation, we also have to add to the other side of the equation. Now, what do we put in the box? That's the question. We will take b over 2 and square it. Okay, so b over 2 and square it. Since it's being squared, it's always going to be a positive. All right, always going to be a positive. So in this case, b is negative 12. So in parentheses, we're going to take negative 12 over 2. That's the b term. It's next to the x. And then square it. That's equal to negative 6 squared, which is 36. Okay, so inside the box, we're putting a 36. We're adding 36 to the left side. If I add 36 to the left side, I also have to add 36 to the right side. Now, we are going to then factor. Okay, we can factor this. We created a perfect square trinomial. 36 is a perfect square. The square root of 36 is what we had here, 6. Okay, so we're going to rewrite it in factored form. That is x plus 6 squared equals negative 5 plus 36 is 31. Okay, I made a small error here. And the reason why I made a small error here is our middle term is negative 12. So this cannot be a plus 6. It needs to be a minus 6 because the middle term was negative. So when I check this, sorry about my little error there, 6 and x, negative 6 times x is negative 6. Double it, that's our middle term. Okay? So we factored it in the form of the perfect square trinomial. That was step 3. So recapping, going back. First, rearranged. Step 2, we found b over 2, squared it, put it in the box, added it on both sides, and then we factored the perfect square trinomial. Okay? Next step is going to be to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus and the minus. So when I take the square root of both sides, square root, plus and minus. Okay? On the left side, square root cancels the squared, and I'm left with x minus 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 31. Okay? Now, we don't know what the square root of 31 is, so we're going to have to get that as a decimal. All right? We will do that at the end. Our next step is to solve for x. Okay? When I solve for x, there's going to be 2 solutions. The reason why there's 2 is because we have a plus and minus the square root of 31. So for me to isolate the x, I will add 6 to both sides. Okay? 6's cancel. And I'm left with x equals positive 6 plus or minus the square root of 31. Okay, I put the 6 first so it's easier to see that we're taking plus the square root of 31 and minus the square root of 31. You could have done the square root of 31 positive plus 6 and negative square root of 31 plus 6 as well, but it's easier to put this term in front of that square root. Okay? Now to find our two solutions, x is equal to 6 plus the square root of 31, and x is also equal to 6 minus the square root of 31. And you will need to use a calculator to find that. When you type that in, you will get x to equal approximately 11.57, and x will also equal approximately, I'm using a squiggly because it's about 0.43. When you type that into your calculator, just going to show you here real quick, on mine, you should say that you're typing in 6 plus second square root button, 31, enter. Mine left it as a radical. To get a decimal, I'll push the arrow key, 11.56. Okay, so that's how we type it in. 6 plus the square root of 31 and 6 minus the square root of 31. You have to do it twice. And that's approximately 0.43. So make sure you type both those in. It's not just a positive and negative 11.57. You have to type in 6 plus square root of 31 and 6 minus square root of 31. So that is our first example. We have completed one. Okay. We are going to do 2 more together today on completing the square. And make sure you're doing a good job of following these along. Try and do them on your own, and we'll see how she goes. So, first step. Have to bring the constant to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 24 from both sides. And I am left with x squared minus 10x plus my box equals negative 24 plus my box. Inside the box is b over 2 squared. In this case, b is negative 10. So that would equal negative 10 over 2 squared. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. So we are going to add 25 to the left side. If I do it to the left, I also have to do it to the right. Now, I've created, again, that perfect square trinomial. So now we got to factor it. Square root of 25 is 5. Middle term's negative. So it's x minus 5 squared. Okay, perfect square trinomial. Take the square root, take the square root. Check it. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Double it, our middle term. We got it right. Equals negative 24 plus 25, that is 1. Now that we have the squared isolated on the left side, we can take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus and the minus. Square root and squared cancels, so I'm left with x minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 1. Okay? Don't forget that plus or minus. Now, solve. Add 5, add 5. X equals. 5 is positive, plus or minus the square root of 1. Now, when I solve this one, the square root of 1 is just 1, so our two solutions, x equals 5 plus 1, and x is also equal to 5 minus 1. X is equal to 6, and x is also equal to 4. We found our two solutions. Okay, last example. The next one. Got to bring the constant to the other side. Add 6, add 6. X squared plus 6x plus our box equals 6 plus another box. Inside the box, b over 2 squared. In this case, b is 6. So we put 6 in for b. 6 over 2 squared. 6 over 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So we are adding 9 to both sides. Now we can factor. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of x squared is x. Inside the parentheses, x plus 3 squared equals 15. Next step, take the square root. Don't forget plus and minus. X plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 15. Subtract our 3, subtract our 3. Now this time our 3 is negative. So when I rewrite x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 15. Now when you type this one in, our two solutions, x is equal to negative 3 plus the square root of 15, and x is also equal to negative 3 minus the square root of 15. Okay? Now you're going to have to use your calculator for that one again because the square root of 15 is a decimal. And when you type that in, x is approximately 0.87, and x is approximately negative 6.87. And those are our two solutions for completing the square. So make sure you use your calculator for those. All right, that's it for today. Like we said, we'll be working on this all week. Make sure if you need some extra help, you stick around and get it in the Google Meets. Have a great day.